Welcome to Back from the Abyss. I'm Dr. Craig Heacock. Very few people are willing and or able to share and describe their descent into psychosis. In part because memory formation and consolidation are so impaired during episodes of psychosis. And also because there's often so much fear and shame tied up in the experience of losing one's mind. In today's story, my patient Corben describes his very early onset illness, how it started with years of profound depression and then shifted into alienation and eventual psychosis. As you listen to his story, you might notice that it doesn't necessarily follow a strict chronology. This is because of the way that psychotic symptoms aren't stored in narrative memory. They tend to be like random clouds of frightening despair that occasionally block out the sun, predictably unpredictable, and difficult to weave into one's life story. This may seem an unusual episode to follow my critique 2 weeks ago of med management, as an antipsychotic played such a critical role in Corben's path to recovery. But I encourage you all to listen to the role that trust played in Corben's willingness to try taking medication. No basic foundation of trust, no treatment. No respect and compassion, again, no treatment. Another interesting aspect of Corben's treatment journey involves ketamine. Now, there's this belief out there that if someone has had psychotic symptoms or a psychotic episode, then they aren't safe to do ketamine. But the reality is that if past psychotic symptoms came out of a primary mood disorder, such as bipolar disorder or schizoaffective disorder, then ketamine can be very safe and a game changer. And finally, as I listened to the last edit of this story, I was struck by the way I was seemingly trying to obscure where this story was recorded. So here it is, truth be told. Corben and I met to record this story in my favorite place in Colorado, Crested Butte. I hope you enjoy this story.
I am the oldest of 3 kids. Growing up, my dad was a very kind and loving person. He led by example, and I think that really expresses who he was as a person, where he set a good example of who to be and how to live and trusted that you would do your best. My mom she's probably the most hardworking, sincere person I know. Growing up, she spent her time taking care of the kids, really immersing herself in cultures of the many countries we lived in. She really put a lot of work and love into making sure we were open-minded and kind kids. My sibling, just younger than me, is super artistic and uniquely expressive. Growing up, we had a lot of ups and downs. We had periods of being super close friends and periods of being enemies. My youngest brother, he is unbelievably smart. He's in high school, but is taking a majority of his classes at the college. And on the side of that, he's into acting and teaching himself Japanese. He's very independent. He is not judgmental of me and my animal lifestyle. He's very empathetic, and especially since I've become less independent after getting medicated and recovering from psychosis. He's been very understanding and tries to be my friend, and I really appreciate that about him. My role in the family growing up, I was the big brother. My siblings looked up to me, and my parents expected a lot from me. Before I was really sick, I feel like I lived up to those expectations. I was always working. I graduated high school at 17 with a high GPA, made lots of art all the time, and had good social skills and allowed me to network within various communities I was a part of. When I got sick, I kind of stepped down from that big brother role and wasn't living up to expectations anymore. My parents and my cousin were the only people that really stayed with me and endured the pain until I eventually got better. I've reconnected with a lot of people, especially my siblings, and I've stepped back into that, not necessarily big brother role, but sibling role to give love and unconditional support and love to my family and my siblings, at least to show gratitude for their empathy and patience with me.
Mm-hmm. When do you think the mental illness first began to appear?
Well, as long as I can remember, I've always been highly sensitive to sensory stimulus and have been very emotional. I remember reading books, touching a lizard, or listening to music and having intricate, detailed visuals and visualization while engaging my senses. I still have vivid memories of those visions when I think back at the moment. I also had imaginary friends, which is pretty normal for a kid, but I could see them when I imagined them. I remember when I was 10, I was on the bus to school in South Africa, and my imaginary friend, Mojo, a monkey, was chasing the bus, and I could see him jumping over cars, doing stunts to keep up with the bus. What's interesting about that, though, is the memory of that moment. I see Mojo, that monkey, in the memory, like he was actually there. But imaginary friends are all kind of normal kid stuff. I don't think I noticed getting sick until the severe depression around 5th grade. I struggled with depression consistently throughout middle and high school. On top of that, I was still having vivid visualization and with senses, and depression was not fun visuals. It was very crippling, and I didn't want to do anything.
So this goes way back.
Yeah. So like 5th grade is when I started feeling depressed. And I remember just looking forward to moving again, because we would move every couple years, and I just wasn't happy where we were, and I was hoping moving would make me less depressed. And then we moved, and I was still depressed.
Do you think you knew what that was then?
No, I just thought I was sad, and I didn't have many friends like I used to, and I blamed it all on moving around so much, but it was something deeper than just moving, I think.
Mm-hmm. You know, as a kid, you've talked with me about how much animals played such a crucial role in your life from your earliest days until now.
Like when I was most depressed, I would hang out with my cat and just follow him around, and he was my buddy, and I would just watch him. He loved to hunt rabbits, and I'd watch him hunt, and the animalistic rawness, and you could see this hunter in this little house cat. I thought there was something so cool about the guts and gore of it, and that the depression kind of enjoyed. On that note, when I got older, to cope with the depression, I started tattooing and stitching myself. When I did it, I could see the inner workings of the tattoo needle, or the trajectory of the needle and thread through my skin, and the self-harm / artistic expression combo brought a lot of peace. As I did it, I saw the angst and the anger and the sadness disappear, and I saw beautiful shades of red and blue mixing together, and I was just present, and the pain and the art side of it, I really enjoyed it and really found peace with it. As I transitioned to more independent life and started, when I moved out, I really started noticing crippling anxiety and struggled, especially when I'd try to communicate my feelings with others. I would have visions of what could go wrong or get frustrated that I see and feel certain emotions so clearly, and the person I was trying to communicate with couldn't. So I was left with this horrible anxiety of like, why did I even share my thoughts, or do I even share my thoughts again? Or it just left me feeling isolated. I really limited and was very selective with who I communicated with on a deeper level. I think looking back, I had signs of manic and psychotic episodes when I would randomly drive hours into the wilderness and hike up random mountains with no trail or anything, and just to take a picture at the top, or to say I climbed to the top of the mountain, and I'd spend all night hiking back down the mountain, or just doing kind of crazy things. I wouldn't tell anyone where I was. I would just...
So you maybe 16, 17, 18 when this is happening?
Yeah. Around that age, yeah. And that, I would do that. Like, that was my summer activity, was to be by myself in nature, just walking around. I felt overwhelmed by the human world, and felt the only place I could be at peace was alone on a mountain for whatever reason.
Yeah, how and when did things start to take a darker turn? So,
yeah,
as a little guy, as you mentioned, there was really early onset depression and just feeling like, yes, something was not right, and trying to find peace with animals. But then here in your sort of later teenage years, things are really getting more severe, and that you're needing to pull away kind of from humanity and go off on your own.
I think when I noticed something was wrong was especially when I'd break through my anxiety and communicate my feelings. And if it wasn't recognized how hard it was for me to communicate those feelings or wasn't responded in a way I would have liked, I literally felt crazy and extremely angry. I would like isolate myself in my room and just paint or draw out my feelings. But it was that anxiety, when I pushed through it, I really noticed something was wrong. And I think that's when I talked to my mom about maybe getting help for my anxiety, at least. Mm-hmm. I felt like my depression was pretty under control with my outlets of hiking or stitching, or artistic outlets really helped the depression.
How did THC, your cannabis, fit in with this? Because I think it was around this time that you started using more and more of that.
It amplified the visions and the emotions, but in a way where it felt like I was being taught something and I needed to channel that energy into my artistic expressions. And I really thought it was normal for artists to just have crazy visions and feelings, and to be an artist you had to feel these things, and which I think is partly true, but the extent I was feeling them was I would just isolate myself at my house in St. George, wouldn't talk to my roommates. I would just smoke weed and spend hours making videos or painting, or I hung up black sheets on all my walls and painted on all the black sheets, and I thought it looked cool, but my roommates were like, that's kind of crazy. Why are you hanging up sheets all over your walls? Why don't you have be like a normal person and just watch TV? And so I think THC at first was helpful because it really helped figure out some of the emotions, but to a point THC became abuse. I started abusing it and didn't know how to feel or act or live without it. And life just kept being life and getting crazier, and I wasn't dealing with it like I was supposed to. I was just getting high and hoping that I could figure it out.
When do you think you started losing touch with reality? Started having psychotic symptoms? And
probably when I started working overnights at the homeless shelters. Everyone there was pretty crazy. So my sense of sanity was kind of skewed. And then on top of that, I was working 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So my sleep schedule was all different than everyone else's. Majority of the time I was just hanging out with dogs because the dogs would just stay up all night and we'd just play and wrestle. And so I wasn't getting a good, healthy grasp of human interaction, and the human interaction I was getting was not the best. And so I think I started to lose touch with reality because my reality was staying up all night wrestling pit bulls and German shepherds.
Yeah. But you were at least still, functioning enough, healthy enough that you could hold a job.
Yeah.
Even if it was a night job at a homeless shelter, wrestling dogs.
I felt like I was doing good, and I was good at listening to people, and I had a good sense of reading people and making sure fights were mitigated or whatever problems came up. I was pretty good at my job, but part of that was because I was crazy and I wasn't scared of anything. And the reason I got along with the pit bull was she hated me and wanted to bite me all the time, and I got sick of it one night and bit her. And that's a crazy thing to do. You don't bite pit bulls. That's just not a good idea. But she looked at me and was like, "Oh, we are the same."
We speak the same language.
So we just wrestle all night, and we were best friends. And so I really got into this idea that animals are speaking on a certain language that a lot of humans aren't, which is a really cool idea, and I believe there's a lot of truth to it. But being a human, I still have to be able to function and live in this human world. I can't just be talking to stray cats or stray dogs all the time. I have to be able to talk to humans as well.
When did you start getting overwhelmed with rage and fear?
I think there was definitely a certain time that really triggered and caused me to feel rage and fear. And I don't want to talk about that time, but from that point onward, all I was feeling was anger and fear. Like I'd go to sleep and have angry dreams and wake up feeling angry because I had angry dreams, and it was just nonstop anger. And I wouldn't say I was homicidal, because if I really was, I would have killed someone. But in my dreams, I was homicidal, and I'd wake up disturbed because I was angry, but not angry enough to like kill someone or get arrested. Or I think the anger and rage was a lot of fuel to the psychosis, but I think the psychosis had already started before the anger and the rage.
Do you remember what kinds of things you were believing back then? Which again, I'm guessing while you were in it just seemed obvious and apparent, but maybe looking back, how your thoughts started to change and your beliefs started to change as you got more and more ill.
Everyone wants to say they don't have an ego, but I had this idea of letting go of myself and not having an ego, but that became the ego I had of, I don't have an ego. I'm not connected to anything or anyone. I'm one with the universe. And I genuinely thought like THC was like a spirit guide for me to listen to and follow. And I still believe it was, but it became abusive. And now THC isn't helpful for me at all. It gives me horrible crippling anxiety. And I still believe that it was the spirit guide, but now it's the spirit guide of like, you need to learn to live without THC. Other crazy things I believed I could see with my eyes closed, and I would drive with my eyes closed and then slam on the brakes and open my eyes, and I had just missed rear-ending a car. And that just made me further believe I could see with my eyes closed, because I didn't rear-end the car, but I thought I was invincible and would do reckless things like that. And looking back on it, I'm so glad nothing went wrong. That was not safe, and I was just behaving in a very scary manner. And
you got to the point where, you were really not able to care for yourself, yet you were caring for a bunch of animals.
Yeah.
Which I find that so interesting.
I got a promotion and was the activities coordinator for homeless shelter. And so I would plan activities that involved food so that I could also eat, and everyone loved food. And so I was a big success there. But any spare money I had, I would spend on plants or animals or enclosures or food for my animals. I wouldn't spend any money for food on myself. I would only eat at work. I was really good at listening to animals for whatever reason and taking care of them and keeping them alive, while I was literally withering away. I think I weighed 125 when I first saw you. I weigh 175 now, and I'm not overweight or anything. It's just I was that skinny.
Yeah. You were taking what little money you had for food and not feeding yourself, but feeding your animals.
Exactly.
Because you were just starving and wasting away.
Because I didn't see why I needed to take care of myself. But these animals, I reconnected with a deeper part of myself from when I was a kid. And being with these animals helped me feel calm, and like this crazy idea that all animals are on some sort of communication level. I really believe that, and I saw that with these animals, and I saw that with these cats and dog, like my dog with the cats. They're two different species, but they can somehow communicate, even though one barks and one meows. And so I really believe I was onto something, but I wasn't taking care of myself. And I see now there's no reason to pursue these bigger things or goals in my life if I can't keep myself alive to see them through.
When you were deep in psychosis, dreaming and nightmares played a major role for you. What do you remember about that?
I was having vivid and disturbing dreams that felt very real. Every morning I'd wake up with new memories of things I've done or happened and felt just like a memory from a few days ago. I knew it wasn't real, but every morning I'd have to spend hours processing and reliving the experience. I was already struggling enough with reality during the day, and then going to sleep and waking up and not knowing what felt real or not, because it all felt vivid and real and very visceral. The time that dreams became the worst, though, was actually after I started seeing you and stopped using THC. The dreams became even more and harder to process. I remember having multiple dreams where I was at a reoccurring location and I stabbed someone that I was angry at, and then I would try to run away, but it felt like my legs were made of lead, and then I would get caught and then killed, and then I'd wake up. And it was scary because I didn't want to hurt someone, and then it also felt like I couldn't get away from my past in a sense. I remember waking up and the heavy legs just felt like a symbolism or metaphor for the fact that I can't escape my actions in my past.
A lot of people have had the experience of waking up and not being sure if their dream was true. But for you, it could go on for hours.
Yeah.
You're so deep in it, you couldn't sort of test reality. Did that happen or not?
Definitely. And every morning I'd spend 2 hours in a cold shower with a sketchbook, and I would just journal or draw and just zone out and relive the memories of the dream. And instead of seeing them so much as real or symbolic, I would just try to see them as, okay, that was a past life. Let's move on into what this life is now and work forward and not get bogged down by what the dreams were and what I felt they were representing, and kind of come to terms with that they're just dreams. It's not real.
Do you think, looking back, that you, again, had some idea that you were kind of losing your mind, that there was something, psychologically wrong with you? Or again, were you so immersed in it that you didn't really have the ability to sort of step outside yourself and see what was happening?
I knew something was wrong, but so many things kept just happening that felt like the craziest coincidences, that it felt like something bigger is going on besides me. One memory I had this one dream in particular where I was running around my grandparents' yard with my dog, and my grandma, who passed away a few years previous, was in the garden, and she looked at me and said, "Hi, Corben." And surprised to see her, I said, "Hi, Grandma." And I sat next to her, and she just continued pulling weeds. We sat in silence for a little bit while she worked. It was pleasant, and I just remember the sun on my skin and sitting there and pulling weeds with her like I used to. Then she said to me, "Corben, I know you've been having a tough time. Things are hard for you right now. I want you to know you're doing everything right to get through this, but I also want to tell you that when I look back at my life, the only regret I have is that I wasn't able to forgive others. That's the only thing I would have changed. I definitely don't regret eating lots of butter." She loved butter, and it took a few years off her life. She loved butter so much. She said she would do everything the same. She would just learn to forgive. And we sat there for a little bit longer. She continued to work in the garden. It was really nice. But this memory of her in this dream, it happened at a time where I was really angry and struggling to move on. And I woke up, and it really felt like I just had this conversation with my dead grandma. I like to believe that there's an afterlife, or past lives or future lives are a thing, but also I just take everything with a grain of salt. And the fact that I had this dream was a pivotal moment for me to move past this anger, but also to see that I'm not alone, even though I felt alone. My subconscious visualization of my grandma was still there with me. And so I feel conflicted because it feels so real, and I want to believe that she came and visited me in a dream. But then part of me is also like, it was just a dream, because if that one's real, what other ones are real? And so I don't know how I feel about dreams anymore. I just kind of take them with a grain of salt and try not to look too hard into them, but wake up and I'm like, oh, that was a fun dream, or wow, that was kind of disturbing. We're going to take a minute to process.
When you were deep in psychosis, I remember hearing that you lived in this room and it's surrounded by knives. What was going on then? Can you take yourself back to that mindset?
So I lived in this basement, and it had just been used for storage, and I pushed all the storage to the front of the room, and then I hung up sheets and made like a little maze that you had to walk through, and then it circled around to where my bedroom and animals were. During that time, I was just angry, and I just wanted to be left alone. I wanted people to be kind of scared of me, because I didn't want to hurt someone, but I didn't want someone to test me. So I was angry, and I had probably 20 knives that I'd confiscated from the homeless shelter. And I just stabbed them into the walls and the doors, and I just made it look like I was crazy. And my intention with that I wasn't scared of anyone in particular. I wasn't really paranoid. I was more scared of the fact that if someone really pushed me, I would react in a way I would have regretted. So I wanted it clear as soon as you came in that room, you're like, oh, there's some bad energy going on here. Let's step out of this and leave this person alone. I thought it was kind of funny or fun or kind of an artistic expression, but hearing you talk about it from a medical standpoint, you're like, something's really wrong with this person, that they're stabbing knives into all their furniture. Or like, even my parents were scared for me because a sane person doesn't have knives sticking out of everything.
Yeah. Corben, eventually you got to the point where you were really just consumed with self-hatred and starting to get suicidal. What do you remember those times?
I just remember I had lost everything and pushed everyone away. I didn't have a reason to live. I enjoyed my job at the homeless shelter, and it was a nice break from feeling the way I was feeling. But when I was off work, I just wanted to sleep, but then I'd have crazy dreams. And so I really felt like the best way to get through it was to just die. Honestly, what got me through that was my dog. He really...
Who's here with us today.
Yeah, who's here. Was panting earlier. Yeah. But he sensed, like, we just spent so much time together and we really bonded, that he sensed and was scared for me when I was feeling suicidal or cutting myself or tattooing or stitching myself. He was worried for me. And over time, he learned that the best thing he could do is to get up in my face and calm me down or lick me, or just, he is the reason I'm alive right now, partly because I don't know who would take care of him if I was gone, but also he took care of me. The least I can do is take care of him.
Yeah. How did you two find each other? Because again, you found him when you were deep in your illness.
Yeah. So I was working the homeless shelter, hanging out with the pit bull, and I decided I needed to get my own dog. And so I would just look on Craigslist, or there's like adoption sites, and I one day saw this dog up for adoption in Cedar Edge. And I got off at 7 a.m., drove straight to Cedar Edge, found him, and they said 3 other people had already scheduled an appointment to adopt him. And so since I was the first person there, they let me hang out, and I just hung out at the shelter and hung out with him. And he was very uncoordinated, never been brushed or taken care of, but I just felt a connection with him. And then as the day went on, the first person never showed up. The second person just saw another dog and adopted another dog, never even looking at my dog. The third person was like a German Shepherd collector. And thank goodness my dog didn't get along with his dogs. Like, he just wanted to fight them. And so they couldn't adopt him. And they're like, well, you're you stayed around all day and you seem like you take good care of him. And it was one of those things where it felt like something bigger in the universe was going on. It just kind of came together, I want to say miraculously, because I really didn't choose him. It was all up to fate, and
But you kind of found exactly what you needed.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, something to give you meaning, connection, purpose, safety.
And the fact that, because he'd just been kept in a cage outside the first 2 years of his life, he was not trained, and so it gave me something to focus on, and training a dog takes constant effort and attention. My experience with the pit bull at the shelter and training her really helped, and I would train them both at the same time and started making up words and commands, and it gave me a sense of purpose, even though that purpose was just running around being a dog or wrestling or biting. Like, I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt I had someone by my side through what I was going through.
And again, it sounds like your dog was getting the best of you.
Yeah. No, well, yes, but he also saw all the shitty stuff I was going through. Sorry for the language. But he saw how much I was struggling. And like at first it scared him and he ran away. And it really put me in check, because I was like, okay, I can't behave that way. He'll run away. So I would have to observe my actions from an outside perspective. And then eventually he learned how to help me. And we haven't had any issues. And he's smart, because like now if I get frustrated with him, he doesn't listen to my command, he gets up on me, and I can't get angry at him because he's doing what he's supposed to when I get angry. And so he's kind of tricky sometimes, and he knows how to get out of being in trouble. But when I genuinely am struggling, he knows what to do.
How is it that you ended up starting in treatment? Because again, you know, you're working, but you're losing weight. You're basically starving down to nothing. You are pulling away from society. You are trying to scare people enough to keep them away from you. How is it that you finally started getting into psychiatric treatment?
So probably a year or so before I started working at the homeless shelter, my mom convinced me to see a doctor about my anxiety, because it was crippling. And so I got on an SSRI, and that helped. But then as life happened, it would only do so much.
But again, hindsight's 2020. But it sounds like what you were going through then was far beyond anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you were drenched in fear.
Yeah, definitely. Like, looking back at it, it was not just anxiety, but that's all I was getting diagnosed with. That's all I was comfortable talking about with people. But then as I got crazier and things got crazier, my parents got more worried and convinced me to see other therapists, specifically about anger, and the therapists weren't a good fit. And it got worse, and so eventually they convinced me to see a psychiatrist specializing in young adults. And she asked a few questions, and best way I can explain it is I hated her. Like, I did not like her energy. I just did not trust her. Trust was super important for psychiatric care, because for me, if I don't trust someone, they're not going to get the answers they need to diagnose me. And so this psychiatrist asked a few questions, and I didn't answer truthfully because I didn't like her and I didn't trust her. And after 5 minutes, she immediately diagnosed me with severe anxiety, and then spent the rest of the time talking about how successful she was. That was just a huge turnoff, because it was like, I don't care who else you've helped, you're here to help me. Convincing me that you've helped people isn't going to convince me that you're going to help. Like, you need to, I don't know how to describe it, but
were you having
very unprofessional?
Yeah. Were you having psychotic symptoms then that you just didn't want to share with her?
Yeah. Yeah. And my mom might have shared some of them with me. I think my mom called her when I wasn't there, because my mom would come to every session with me, and she'd call them and be like, Corben's also experiencing these. And the psychiatrist was like, no, that's just anxiety. If he gets better sleep and stays on this medicine, he'll be just fine. And as time went on with that psychiatrist, it just got the psychotic symptoms just escalated, and like she asked me to draw blood to see if my blood count is off. I don't know what she wanted the blood for, but it just made me mad that I had to go give blood. And then while I was giving blood, I just felt violated and just walked out before they could even take my blood. And it really didn't work, because she didn't express actually any concern for me. My mom said she would deal with the billing, not to talk to me about it. And she kept texting me and asking me to pay her. And I told her, I'm like, my mom is the one doing that. And then she kept texting me, and like, she genuinely did not care about me.
So how is it? Because I think you saw me shortly after her.
Yeah, probably a couple months or 2 months after.
So that seemed like a big ask, that your family or your parents said, hey, see someone else.
Yeah.
And you felt really, I don't know, kind of violated and misunderstood by psychiatric profession. Like, how did that come about that you agreed to see me? And I'm also curious about trust, because, at this point in your life, you had little to no trust. One, because of past experiences, but two, just because the way your brain was working or not working.
Yeah. No, I think, so a big part of it is like, I was going crazy, but I was still very sensitive to people's energies and their vibes, I guess. I remember my parents had me listen to one of your podcasts and hearing you talk, and I've just felt comfortable that you were a safe person to trust. And I was also miserable and felt like my world was falling apart, and my parents were sad and scared, and you were kind of like the last Hail Mary for them. This doesn't work. We don't know what to do for you. And I could see that, and I wanted to be better, but I was also sick of making my parents miserable. So after listening to a few of your podcasts, and they brought up ketamine and psychedelics and how you do ketamine treatments, and that was the first time I've ever heard of ketamine, but I used to love LSD. I'd do it like once a year just as like a spiritual thing. And hearing you talk about psychedelics, I felt I could trust you, because there's a certain realm that the psychedelics exist in, and talking about them and experiencing them. And that's something I couldn't have done with the previous psychiatrist. She had no experience in that realm, or how to deal with people that had used psychedelics. And then also the idea that I would get to try a new psychedelic that might potentially be helpful, and it would be accepted by my parents and be a medical thing.
My memory was that very first session, I asked you to start a medication called olanzapine, which is a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic. And my memory was, when I asked you, I thought, there's no way he's going to agree to this. Because again, you were so scared. You were just wasted away to nothing. Like when I saw you, you looked like someone who was sort of in like 8 months into meth, but you weren't doing meth.
Yeah.
But you were skin and bones. You were scared. You weren't sleeping. Kind of quasi-paranoid and agitated, and yet you agreed to take that medication.
Yeah. Well, I also didn't know it was an antipsychotic. You said it would help give me a longer fuse. And I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. I'm sick of being angry. I want to feel better, and I'm willing to try anything. And so initially, olanzapine really did help me not be so explosive and angry, but it made me human again. Before olanzapine, I was invincible. My actions didn't have consequences. But after getting medicated, it was really hard, because I saw the consequences and pain of my past actions. And I saw how scary everyday things were, like driving or even riding my bike, which I'd been doing for years with no fear.
It's almost like you got better and worse with the olanzapine.
Yeah.
Like the agitation, the paranoia, the psychosis, the disordered thinking, sleep, that all got better. But then, as you said, that sort of kind of, I think, like delusional grandiosity that went away, and now you felt so vulnerable and so raw and so scared.
Yeah.
A different kind of fear.
It was probably the hardest, like, my favorite American Dad quote is, I'd rather be acting crazy than feeling crazy. And so when I was acting crazy, I didn't feel crazy. I was just acting crazy, and it felt like it's what I should be doing. But when I was on olanzapine, I was feeling crazy, and I hated it. And I saw just how crazy my actions were, and I saw just how scary the world was and how vulnerable I am.
Mm-hmm. It's almost for the first time, like the olanzapine kind of cleared away the smoke, so you could look back and see, oh wow, this is what I was doing, and this is how I was acting, and this is the risks I was putting myself in and my family, and that was its own awful kind of pain.
Yeah, definitely. During that time too, as I got on olanzapine, I also quit my job at the homeless shelter, which is a really good thing because things were just getting crazier and crazier there with management and the residents. And since I was no longer crazy, I don't know how I would have been able to survive in that work environment. Because I had just quit my job, I had no income, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was trying to come to terms with everything that I'd done and felt, and come to terms with my dreams. And I'm just so grateful for my parents, because every day I would just call them crying, and life was the hardest it's ever been because I had so much clarity, but also I had just been made human again, it felt like.
My goal with the olanzapine was to get you sleeping, was to dial down the fear and the agitation and potential aggression. And then after that, we moved to ketamine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Corben, looking back, and you still do periodic ketamine treatments, but do you remember looking back when you first came to see me? At first, we got things kind of stabilized with olanzapine, but how did ketamine initially help you, and how has it continued to help you?
Initially, yeah, I remember coming out of ketamine the first time and then just finding my mom and crying and saying, "Thank you so much. That's exactly what I was trying to achieve with THC." And what I had achieved essentially was perspective, like a bigger perspective. I could see this idea of past lives or future lives, or like I just saw how small my life was and how little it mattered. And so the ketamine put me in this realm where I was minuscule and not important, and it felt so comforting, and it felt so good to just know that it doesn't matter in the end. As I've continued to do ketamine, it's different every time. Sometimes it's that same feeling of I'm small and insignificant and I don't need to worry so much. Other times it's very specifically guiding. Like I had this one treatment where I saw just how gray and dark the world was, and how Grand Junction, where I live, has a huge medical industry. And I saw how so many people go there to die. And I just came out of it and was like, I need to be working at hospice. So I figured out how to volunteer at hospice. I got my dog therapy dog certified. And because of ketamine, I was on a very specific path. Whereas like I think the last ketamine treatment I did, I saw a timeline and where my life fit into time. And then I saw my timeline specifically, how certain patterns were repeating. And I saw how I'm going to outlive my parents and my dog, and how I need to learn how to live without them. So I actually came out of it more depressed, but it gave me the direction I needed to like appreciate my parents, appreciate my dog, because I'm not going to have them forever. And so
I remember that session when you came out of ketamine and you said, I think I need to work with hospice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was amazing.
It was because every time ketamine is different for me, but the reason I love doing treatments every couple months is because it helps me kind of get back on track. If I've gotten stuck in a rut or I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I try and look for something within the ketamine treatments on where to go and what to do.
Mm-hmm. For months, Corben, our first few months working together, you didn't want to know your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not somebody, as listeners know, who's super diagnosis focused, but I did think it was an important thing for you to know at some point. And I would ask you occasionally, do you want to talk about diagnosis? And you didn't.
Yeah.
And eventually you did. But I'm curious what you remember in the early part of our treatment, why you didn't want to delve into that.
Big reason I didn't want to know my diagnosis was because I was surrounded by people at the homeless shelter with various diagnoses. I saw how people looked at them and treated them. I really wanted to believe I was different than those people.
And by having a diagnosis, that would make you like them.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be seen or treated a different way because of my diagnosis. Eventually, that kind of backfired because as I told people I'm getting better or I'm getting medicated, they'd be like, oh, what was wrong? And I didn't know what was wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I learned my diagnosis, and then that backfired again because I told too many people my diagnosis, and the stigma around the diagnosis was there, and people distanced themselves from me.
Plus, I think, do you mind if I share your diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my diagnosis that I've come to for you is schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. Mm-hmm. And my sense is that very few people know what that means.
Yeah.
And I think it's even a controversial diagnosis in psychiatry, in fact, what it actually is. But, in general, it's bipolar disorder with a kind of persistent long-term psychotic symptoms that are kind of coming in and out of psychosis. So it's kind of an overlap of where a little bit of schizophrenia meets a little bit of bipolar. Mm-hmm. But I can understand by sharing that diagnosis with people that they could be confused or...
Yeah. And especially they hear bipolar or they hear schizo. They're like, oh, you can't trust he's going to behave this way or behave that way. And so now I'm very careful who I share my diagnosis with because I want my actions to speak for myself. I don't want my diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But there are you get deeper with someone and get to know someone, eventually they're going to have to learn about your diagnosis. And I've been very fortunate to people I share it with now are very understanding and don't treat me any different or trust me. And they understand that I am medicated and doing better, but I do have a history and past of being crazy. Mm-hmm.
What would you say has gotten better with treatment? Because again, you talked about some of the challenges with the olanzapine things. Some things got better, some things got harder. I don't know if worse is the right word, but just new challenges opened up. But looking back on where you were a few years ago, where you are now, how would you summarize what's gotten better?
I really struggle with fear still. That's a huge one. Mm-hmm.
Fear of what? How would you characterize your fear?
Fear of humans, fear of driving, fear of going to the store, fear of...
But can I just push you back on that a little bit? You had to drive a couple hours to get here, and you're sitting with me. I'm ostensibly human. Uh-huh. So how was that to go on a significant drive through the mountains to meet with me? We're sitting here face to face at this little table.
I wouldn't have been able to do it if you were in Fort Collins because the traffic and the driving there, I still can't do that. But today, driving the mountain road and
we got to meet partway.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was still sweating and scared as I was driving the mountain road because I'm like, what if I go off the side too much? Or what if someone comes around the corner too fast? I still have these fears, but I'm able to kind of push through them and you utilize the adrenaline to get here. I was still nervous about seeing you and being here. My gut was all in knots, but I trust you and I'm really grateful that I get this opportunity to share my story.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting example that even though you and I have spent a lot of time together, there's part of you that trusts me and feels comfortable with me, but part of it is just not
Yeah.
comfortable there. As you said, there's kind of
Mm-hmm.
this core fear that another human, kind of a mystery in and of myself, and
Yeah.
just that kind of animal to animal nature
Mm-hmm.
of it.
No, definitely. And it's something that I get better every day, but I have to really put in the energy to push through those fears. Like if it were up to me, I'd just stay at home all day hanging out with my animals. Like if I don't have to go to the store, I won't. Like my mom still helps me a lot. Like she'll be like, okay, let's go to the store, and I'll go with her. Even though I have a service dog,
Yeah.
it's still not easy. What has really improved significantly though is my anger. I very rarely have explosive meltdowns like I used to. The other day, my dog was in protest and he peed on the floor. And a couple of years ago, I probably would have punched a hole in the wall and just thrown a little tantrum. Whereas this time, I like lectured him and gave him a stern, like, don't do that. And he got up on me and calmed me down. But it was nowhere near explosive or angry like I would have been a couple of years ago. Another thing I noticed too that's improved significantly is my patience and my level of empathy for people. I think this is especially with the olanzapine. I very rarely am like, I'm right, you're wrong, getting angry about. Like I realize it's just easier to say you're wrong sometimes and talk through it. Whereas before olanzapine specifically, I wouldn't have been able to take the time to see someone else's point of view. I would have just seen my point of view and how I needed to drill my point of view.
Where are you now with your, self-esteem, self-image? Because we talked a few minutes ago about how much just self-loathing and self-hatred there was when you were deep in it. But where are you now with that?
I feel like I'm pretty good. I've had to, like, when I got on olanzapine, I had to rebuild who Corben was. I had horrible, like, I just didn't know who I was anymore because everything I had defined myself with, I either had burnt bridges with the people in that community or I had just gone too far in the deep end. I just wasn't that person anymore. And so now, after a couple of years of being medicated and rebuilding and overcoming fears, I'm pretty confident I know who I am now and who I am to other people. I see myself as a very peaceful, hopefully loving, patient person. And that's something I've had to focus on becoming. It's not just, I think as a kid I was that sort of person, but as I got depressed and angry, I lost sight of that patient and loving side of myself. So I think nowadays I really am the best of who I was as a kid. I have all the experience and knowledge from going down the deep end, and I know not to do that anymore, but I learned from it, and I'm a lot smarter and wiser and more humble because of it, I think.
I might point this out too, excuse me, and this is something I've told you a number of times, Corben. It's so clear to me how much healthier you are because you look great. I mean, so when we met, you were just wasting away to nothing.
Yeah.
You basically had a shaved head. You looked very sick. You
Yeah.
look amazing now. You have this awesome long hair, and you have a sparkle to your eye, and you look great. Like it's just,
Thank you.
It's amazing. I was just looking. You and I met a little over 2 years ago. You're kind of a complete, like you don't even look like the same person.
No, I don't feel like the same person. I really feel like I got sent to some dark realm and was reborn, and had to recreate who I am now. And it's cool too because like I pulled out all my hair, right? I looked crazy, and then my hair was straight and blonde, and it grew back curly and dark, and I visibly look like I'm a new person. Like,
You do, yeah, like completely reborn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been so meaningful to work together. Yeah, I so vividly remember meeting you, and it's amazing that was just over 2 years ago.
I know.
Well, I want to thank you for driving up here in the mountains to meet me.
Of course, it was a
We kind of
pleasure.
met halfway, I guess, roughly.
Yeah, no, I love coming over here, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really good to have you here. I think it's just so inspiring that to see you come from such depths. I have a psych NP who's working with me now, and she said, how many of your patients really make amazing gains? And I said, so many of them. I'm not saying that's mean.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you stick with treatment and you get solid treatment, you can get better. And so,
no, definitely.
Yeah.
And like, that's why I'm glad I did listen and trust you, because I wouldn't be here talking to you. Like, I would probably be homeless or dead just because of the trajectory I was going on.
yeah, thank goodness you're not.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it every day.
As psychiatric clinicians, before we can try to help anyone, we need to establish safety. We need to build trust. We need to slow down, take some deep breaths, stop trying to figure out what to do and what to fix, and first, focus on what is happening in the space between, this mysterious and magical space between the patient and us.